Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today I'm going to start a new project and try something I've never done before. And that's the whole point of this YouTube channel, is I like to try things I've never done before and see how they turn out. Sometimes I have to redo it, sometimes it works great. It's just getting that idea down into that project that you're trying to complete with some leather. So this one is going to be interesting because I'm going to use probably 3 different types of leather to complete this project. I'm going to use some veg tan, natural, probably about 10 ounce. So I'm going to use some of that. I may use some of this, it's probably about 7 or 8 ounce soft chrome tan. And then I've got this super soft, almost a suede on the back, right at 7 to 8 ounce. So I'm not sure which one of those last two I'm going to use, but definitely going to use the veg tan. Then I actually purchased a rattlesnake skin, so we're going to incorporate that into this project. And this leather is really lightweight and thin, so it's beautiful, but we're going to incorporate this into the project that I'm doing. So I'll explain to you what the project is, and come on in and let's get started. Alright, so the project that I'm doing is I'm going to do a cross draw holster for this Heritage bird heads grip, and it's a revolver. It's brand new in the box, never been out, never been fired. It's empty. I just knocked something over on my workbench. So it's safe to work with. This is the one that they sell that is the 22 long rifle 22 Magnum, so you do get both cylinders with this. I've had this quite a while. I've just never done anything with it. I just bought it because I thought it was beautiful, and it's unusually heavy for that size, because it's only got a 3-inch barrel. So it's a short barrel. It does have fixed front sights and fixed rear sights, but my wife has a Heritage Arms 22 long rifle 22 Magnum, and she loves to shoot it. It's got the 7-inch barrel on it though, and the regular grip. So picked up this a while back, and I wanted to do a holster for it, but I wanted to do a special holster for it, and I never came across any ideas or anything that really just jumped out at me that I wanted to do for it. So I happened to be at a swap meet, flea market type situation the other day, and I came across this guy selling leather. So I picked up the rattlesnake skin, and this is the project I thought of as soon as I saw it. So I grabbed that rattlesnake skin. I thought it was fairly reasonable. It was $8. So, and I can get at least 2 or 3 maybe 4 projects out of that one piece. So that's pretty economical. So what I want to do is I want to start by doing my pattern. And my pattern is going to be kind of complex because I'm going to have to do 2 pieces or 3 pieces depending on how I'm going to put this together, because I'm going to have that inlay of rattlesnake skin on the outside, and I'm going to have a double layer of leather, and it's going to encase that rattlesnake skin. So basically what I call an inlay of that skin. So what I want to do first is I'm definitely going to make this to where I can use it on any belt. So it's going to have a slide through fold down flap in the back. So I'm going to attach this somehow. Obviously I don't want to make a I really don't want to make like a double loop, Mexican double loop or anything, because I want to highlight that rattlesnake skin as much as possible. So what I want to do is go ahead and start with my pattern, and I'm going to mark it to where I'm going down the backbone of the revolver, and then I want it to come down I think I want the trigger to barely show, so I'm going underneath the trigger. And these are just some rough lines to get started. And then I'm going to take this point here, I'm going to round it off a little bit, come back down, and then I want to double check that. That looks good. And then I want part of my, at least my gate, my loading gate, I want it to show. So when I do a pattern, I just kind of start lightly sketching this out. Obviously those lines are not going to be exact when I first start, because I have to have enough leather, enough pattern and leather to go over that, and I have to make up for the thickness of this or whatever you're making it for. And this is right at, with the cylinder and everything, it's right at 1.5–1 3/4 inches thick. So that takes up, when you consider that 1 3/4 inches of thickness, that takes up some leather, some room that you don't account for when you do your rough sketch. So you have to come back and account for that as you start drawing out and finalizing your pattern. So the back is going to be folded under. So I like to do that last, after I get this all set up, so I know exactly what size that's going to be. So I can roll this. I've got my center mark. I can roll this and put it on my center. And that kind of gives me an idea of how much room I'm going to need out here. Again, it's just a rough guesstimate. Another thing I can do is lay it back down on the side that I've already sketched out, and I can fold this over on that center mark. And what that does is, if I keep that right on that sight line and that backbone, what that's going to do is give me a really good idea how much material I'm going to need out here on the edge. And again, this is just a rough sketch. And what I can do at that point is I can go ahead and take my scissors or my knife, and I always cut it bigger than what my rough sketch drawing is, and I'll get rid of some of that excess material. And I'm sure there's all kinds of people that do this differently. This is just the way I do it, and it seems to work for me. So I'm not saying this is the only way to do it by any means. It just works for me. So that looks good. So I'm going to continue to fit this. And what I'm going to do is, now that I know I've got enough material here, I'm going to go ahead and cut on that sketched line and just keep working this pattern until I get it exactly like I want it. And if you keep working it, then you can get it the way you want it. It's just like cutting leather or anything else. Wood, you can always cut more off, but if you cut too much off, you can't add it back. So it's kind of the same idea. So what I'm going to do, now that I have this folded over and I got a good idea that that's the shape I want, I'm going to go ahead and follow that line on this side, and that tells me how much I need to come out. And you can see it's quite a bit from my original sketch here. It comes out at least 1¼ inches. So that's how much excess I need to roll over that thickness. It's a little less maybe, or about the same as the thickness of the actual gun, 1½. So I think that's probably, we'll go I've got 1 inch up here. We'll do 1 1/4, and I'll follow the contour of my original drawing. Then that way I can keep the shape, and I'll show you that here in a second what I'm doing. I'm just working my way down about every 1/2 inch. And then I can sketch those lines together. So you can see I went down and marked these lines, these little dashed lines. And then now I'm just connecting those. And I can lay that back down at any time and take a look at that. And again, you can tweak this however you want. As you go. And I'm going to make it just a little bit longer at this point too. As far as the length or the height. And then I'll measure that from the bottom because I know this is square. And that's 1 5/16. I'll go 1 5/16 on this side. And that's where I'll cut that at the bottom. And that gives me plenty of room. I don't want it sticking out the end. I don't like that. I don't want it catching on my sight, my front sight. So then I can fold this over and take a look at that. Look at my design here. And I think this can come down just a little bit now. And that looks pretty good. So what I can do is I can go ahead and cut the side that I've got drawn out. And I'll go from the bottom because I know that's going to be straight. Then I'll follow the contours of my sketched line, and what I call my expanded line, where I added enough extra to make sure I have plenty to stitch and I still get a nice good fit. And then I can't forget that I don't want to cut this completely off because I want to use the back end of it. Back here, I want to use this part to fold over to make my belt loop. So I can come back and cut this side off, get it out of the way. And this is a tedious process sometimes, just to get your pattern the way you want it. But now that I fold this over, now I can follow the contour of the other side, and I can draw that out and trace it. And then cut that side out. And that way I know it's going to match. Getting one heck of a rainstorm right now. I don't know if you can hear that on camera, but it's really coming down. Alright, so I'm going to cut that, continue to get those pieces out of the way there. And again, I'm right-handed, but this is going to be a cross draw. And I fold that over, and I've got all kinds of space there to do my stitching with my inlay and everything. So now I have to figure out how much of this I need to cut out to do my fold over for the back. So I'm going to come up. I don't want it hanging down very far since it's a cross draw. I want it nice and tight. So I may come up just a little bit here. And I don't like it to be totally straight or anything. So I will give it a little bit of curve coming off of there instead of making it straight. And here you're going to have that little ear that comes out, that comes up on this side of the trigger guard. So I'm not really concerned about that. So I'll make it to where we've got the back support of it is going to come to about right here at the base of where the grips are. And that should be about right. You don't want it to be so low that when you go to grab the grip that you can't get your fingers in there like that. You can't get around it. And if you bring it way up back here, then your fingers are going to hit that. So you got to be careful with that. So that's where I'm going to come to on that. And again, it's going to be a cross draw, so I want that angled somewhat, whatever that angle is that I desire. And going to have to turn it one way or the other depending on whether you're right or left-handed. So I want this one um, angled a little bit the top to the right. So that means on the belt, the fold over this side, the trigger side has to be higher than the other side for that to work out right. And I don't want too much of a cant, you know, but I do want a little bit. So I'm going to cut this side down a little bit. Bring this side up. And let's do about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch difference. That's 1.5, and this is 3/4, so that's about right. That's a 1/2 inch difference. And I'll kind of give you an idea what that looks like, and I'm just going to do it as a broken line so I know what I'm looking at here. And as I show you, there's my cant. That's that's the angle it's going to be canted at on the belt, and that's only a 1/2 inch cant. Now, some people may prefer a lot more than that. Again, that's personal taste. I know a 1/2 inch is not a lot, but it is going to give enough that I think will work out perfect for this small gun. Now, if I was doing a 7.5 inch barrel, I'd probably want a bigger cant, just so it wouldn't stick down on my leg and it'd be more to the side of my hip. So, again, personal preference. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have that cant, I'm going to fold this on that line. So turn it over. I'm going to fold it on that broken line that I just drew. It shows the cant. I'm going to go ahead and cut this excess off so that it's not in my way and it's not cumbersome. And that helps with that folding also. Alright, so now I can go ahead and fold this back the other way on that crease, and that'll tell me where I need to do my back piece. So I can go ahead at this point and cut this on that crease. And I'm going to leave a little bit. Again, you could always trim more off. I can trim this now. Because I know where that's going to be. Once you start getting these marks in there, it starts making it a little easier to see what you can trim off and what you need to leave. So I can flip this over now. Line that holster pattern up. And continue my tracing to the other piece, the other side, and then as I continue that, I just keep cutting that out. And you can use scissors or a knife, whatever your personal preference. Again, there's no one way to do this. I do these that I've never done, so I'm not exactly sure specifically what I'm doing because I haven't done it before. So then what I want to do is I want to get close to this same over here. Well, I can't cut that and trace it because I'm keeping all this down here for my back part. So what I'm going to have to do is I come down here to where I cut, and then I want to go from there up, and it's 1 9/16. And again, I can make it a little shorter and always cut more off. That's 1 1/2. And then I just work my way up here. That's 1 3/8. And all I'm doing is getting a rough estimate here. And I'll sketch that line up. And again, I'll cut it a little short because I know I can trim more off. So there goes that piece. Now I can fold that over again, and that kind of gives you an idea of how much more depth I have. And now that I can fold that over and I have that cut, I can lay the gun back in there. And this is going to have to come up more. So you can see once you get started on this, you just tweak it and until you get it exactly the pattern that you want. And that's the key, because once you have your pattern the way you want it, you can transfer that over to your leather. If your pattern's not exactly the way you want it, then you're going to have problems getting the holster or whatever it is you're building to look exactly the way you want. So as you can see, I'll turn this around. I've got my pattern roughed in to where at least now I can see exactly what that's going to look like when it's down in there. I can see how far I can go. I don't want it sticking out the end, and it's not. That gives me, even at its furthest depth, that's going to give me about 3/8 of an inch down there. This looks like it's going to be plenty of room for my stitching. And then that inlay of that rattlesnake is going to go right here. So now to finish this up, I have to fold this over and figure out, now I have my cant on there and everything. Now I can go ahead and sketch where the back leather goes. And I'm not going to have it sticking out the side or anything. I'm just going to have it probably just a little bit smaller. And I'm not going to have it go all the way out here to that ear. So I stopped. Down here at the bottom on my way up, and then I just came down to where that ear would start up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right here, where this ear would go up, you can see where I stopped and then drew straight up. So I'm not following the exact contour, but when you fold it over, you can't see those lines. So I'll have my backing leather there and everything, and there's my cant. So you can tell it's just a 1/2 inch, but you can see the angle. If you look across the top or the bottom of this poster board, it does have an angle to it. 1/2 inch. So now I can go ahead and cut out this back piece, and then that should finish my pattern. For this, I am going to use a knife, and I normally use a knife instead of scissors, but when I'm doing that small intricate cutting like that, trying to make a pattern, sometimes it's easier for me to use the scissors and just cut small pieces off at a time, because again, you can always cut more off, you can't add it back. So I'm very anxious to see how this looks when we get this cut out. So there's my scrap. Let me cut this little piece of, got a little straggler piece there. So there's the backer. So once I put that on there, there's my pattern, there's my back, and then I'll figure out if I'm going to use a strap or how I'm going to keep this around so I can put my belt through here and this will stay stable back here. So I'm not sure. Again, I didn't want to really do a Mexican loop, but it might look good if I do a concho, a small concho, so that I'm not taking up a lot of space over the top of my rattlesnake skin. So I'm going to think about that as I'm getting my leather pieces finalized, what I'm going to use. and everything. I have to kind of coordinate the dyes. Some of that stuff that I wanted to use is pre-dyed, some of it's not. So I'm going to have to do that before we come back and actually start cutting out the actual leather pieces for this. So the other thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a Sharpie and I'm going to mark this pattern as 1/2 inch cant cross draw for heritage, three-inch. I guess it doesn't really matter whether it's a bird's head grip or not. So I'll just put heritage 3-inch 22 mag. That way if I'm looking for it again, it'll be easy for me to find it if I want to make another one for someone else, or I want to make another one for myself. Or you could use the same exact pattern for a 7-inch like my wife has. She's got a 7-inch heritage, and all I'd have to do is lengthen the pattern. That's it. The rest of it would be the same, because the frame between this one and the other one are the same. It's just the length of the barrel that's different. So there's the pattern. So it's ready to go, and I'm ready to start cutting leather. Alright, so I've got the pattern completed, and you can see since I haven't done this particular thing before, it took me a while to get it exactly the way I wanted it, but this should give you an idea what it's going to look like and how I ended up doing it to get exactly the amount of trigger guard showing, how much of the grip. You could see I was talking about earlier in the video about the back, how high you want this, and I kept it low enough to where, notice how natural your fingers go around that grip to pull that out. So that's definitely going to keep that up high enough to where you can get your fingers around that grip. If that's really up here high like that, there's no way to get your fingers around there, because the grips are pushing on the back here. So that's why I kept that up higher, like so. Plus I wanted my loading gate to be accessible, and then notice that my trigger is just under the edge here, so there's no way I'm gonna be able to get my finger in there and accidentally pull that trigger. This does have a external safety on it though, but I do that for safety purposes. But you can pull it out and slide your finger right in the trigger guard. So, and obviously accessible to the hammer. So I think I'm on the right track. Again, this is a first for me to do the inlay, and I'm gonna study what I want to do for the next video on what type of leather out of those that I showed you before I'm going to use, and how I'm going to fit all that together, how I'm going to do the rattlesnake inlay. So please come back, follow along next week, see what I come up with on this project, and I appreciate you watching. Please, like I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.